So I gotta admit, ladies and gentlemen, I have read a lot of articles and a lot of stories regarding Stellar Blade, and almost all of them are stupid, right? Like I'm pretty much used to it at this point. But this one in particular is just extra stupid. And it's written by someone who we have talked about a few times. We've talked about Jade King. Now, Jade King, I assumed when I first read their articles in the past, due to this profile picture, it almost always ends up being a trans person whenever it is a realistic, super animated version of a profile picture, which is what we have here. Come to find out, that's actually what it is, so not too shocking. Jade King decides to want to tell you that, hey, the fact that Stellar Blade just recently announced that it's going to be released uncensored everywhere in the world, that's not something you should be celebrating as gamers.
What is wrong with you?
Yes, ladies and gentlemen, you heard that right. The fact that Stellar Blade will be uncensored should not be celebrated, according to Jade King. That's not something that gamers should be happy about. That's not something anybody should be happy about. And why is that? Well, apparently it's because they don't want to give credit to the culture war, ladies and gentlemen. Yes, Jade King doesn't want to give credit to the arguments that myself and other YouTubers and other people like you have when it comes to this stuff in the culture war in games and entertainment and all that. They don't want to give you credit. And by this game essentially becoming or coming out, I should say, uncensored, that's essentially bolstering our argument further, and they don't want to do that. So let's get into this article, guys, from The Gamer. But of course, before we do, if you are new here, just consider hitting that subscribe button. I would greatly appreciate it, and like the video to push us out into that YouTube algorithm. It says Stellar Blade's uncensored release shouldn't be a cause for celebration. Shift Up has confirmed that every single version of Stellar Blade will be uncensored. But what does that even mean? Well, just really quick, I want to give a shout out to Shift Up for the non-stop epic W's that this company is experiencing right now. I hope that it translates to all the sales in the world, and I hope this makes you realize that, hey, you probably don't have to go public as a company. I know that's been a discussion that they're supposedly going public, and that's going to be very worrisome after this game's release for their future content, because when companies normally go public, that's when shit hits the fan, right? When they start to become a company that has the eyes of like ESG corporations like BlackRock, Vanguard, and whatnot, it becomes an issue. So I hope they stay private, but chances are, let's be real, they're not going to. We got some highlights here. Stellar Blade will be uncensored in all regions. Good job. Meaning players will get the full experience with no cuts. Great job. I assume this means nudity and violence will be completely untouched, but we haven't even been given specifics. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. See, that's the thing. You want specifics to see about whether or not it'll fit your narrative. The specifics don't matter. The simple fact is this company has announced that they will be releasing their complete and full artistic vision of a game uncensored, regardless of wherever the game is coming out. Even if this was a super duper woke fucking game, right, that was just trying to do nonstop woke garbage in the game, all that matters is the game came out uncensored, right? So I feel like it doesn't matter the specifics. It doesn't matter whether that has to do with conservative stuff. It doesn't matter whether that has to do with leftist ideology. It doesn't matter whether it has to do with nudity or violence. The point is, hey, this game is going to come out the exact same experience no matter where you are, and that is what players are celebrating. It says developer Shift Up has announced that Stellar Blade will be launching uncensored across all territories ahead of its release later this week, putting to rest non-existent fears that the game will be nipped and tucked in the name of censorship. Was this ever the case, or is it being hailed as a victory to continue the newfound culture war that the game has been caught up in? So number one, extremely disingenuous. Non-existent fears that the game will be nipped and tucked. That's not non-existent. It is very much a real fear. We have seen prime examples of what happens when games come out and they get censored. Now, a lot of the time, games are getting censored after the fact. You'll end up buying the video game and all of a sudden it gets censored after the fact, after you spent your money, after you bought the product that you thought you were buying, and then all of a sudden it gets censored. Look what's happening with Tomb Raider, the remastered version. Everybody bought that game under the assumption that it'll be unaltered. Actually, it wasn't even an assumption. There was literally a trigger warning at the beginning of the game saying that the experience you're about to have is going to be unaltered in its original form. So everybody was expecting that it was going to be an unaltered game, which is what they got. And then come to find out a few weeks later, it gets censored in a patch. That is a big problem that we're dealing with in gaming right now. And it's not a non-existent fear. The fact that Jade King is trying to make it seem as such is extremely disingenuous. It says it's a complicated situation, and to understand it, we need to look at the relationship between censorship and video games and how their experiences often change depending on when or where we have them. Japan is known for scaling down the difficulty of certain games so that global audiences aren't turned off. Yeah, that's because people in Japan get good and everywhere else doesn't, right? Like you have game journals like yourself that don't actually play video games. I highly fucking doubt you have picked up any real video game in the last 10 years, and yet you're expecting these companies to give you a dumbed down difficulty version because you can't get good. It's stupid. It says, while it will often be less willing to depict graphic or bloody violence in ways that Western audiences embrace, it's rarely about companies trying to stifle our creative expression or free speech. Normally, it's just ratings board stuff and wanting to sell more copies based on the spreadsheet data. Now, that is a fact, okay? There are companies that are willing to censor certain aspects in order to gain the dollar. You know, Jade King is not going to tell you about the companies like Insomniac Games that are willing to give up their entire virtue signaling all to get Middle Eastern money, right? They'll never tell you that. Those kind of companies, they get left out of the conversation because it doesn't fit the narrative. They don't want to admit that virtue signaling for LGBTQ stuff and everything under the sun is just a simple way to get more money in the West from people who normally probably wouldn't have bought the game but just want to buy it to own the chuds. Well, it's the same thing. It says to celebrate that something is released uncensored is to imply that there was something worthy of censorship in the first place. And when it comes to Stellar Blade, I'm unsure where exactly that assumption is coming from. Well, if you looked at the gameplay, instead of staring at Eve's titties and ass, you would realize that, yeah, maybe there is going to be some sexual tones that probably would have been censored in certain areas. The violence especially is extremely up there. It's very bloody, it's very gory, and there are certain areas that are not going to be happy about that. Again, we're not necessarily just talking about the West, we're just talking as a whole. This is a game that 100% could have been censored if they wanted to release it with a better rating somewhere else in another country. But the fact of the matter is, Shift Up is willing to take worse ratings, even though the game is still going to come out. They're willing to take worse, more mature ratings on their game to keep the artistic vision 100%, and that is what people are celebrating. It says, despite struggling to find where the censorship might take place, Stellar Blade managed to trend on Twitter shortly after this announcement regardless. The official social media has also leaned into this news as a form of marketing, with the expectant audiences jumping in to try and praise it for sticking it to the man. What man that is, I don't know, but I assume he's over on the left somewhere. Well, guess what? You would assume right. You would assume right. That's the funny thing about that. No, the man that they're trying to stick it to is the overall idea that you people have where censorship is totally cool as long as it fits your narrative. We want video games to release in the way that they were meant to be released artistically without any censorship. If the game is censored in any way, then we're going to end up having a problem. That could be dialogue, that could be violence, that could be nudity, that could be whatever. It doesn't matter. That is what we're actively fighting against. Censorship is a huge problem in gaming, and the fact that you don't even want to acknowledge it goes to show just how little bit of a gamer you actually are. It says Stellar Blade moves in the same circles as censorship for games like Tokyo Mirage Sessions, which at the time was panned by niche audiences when Nintendo decided to cover up a main character's much mean vagina bones in select cutscenes. Well, exactly, see? Outfits were edited to cover up and reduce cleavage, while detailing was removed to move away from the illusion of nudity. See, all of that is a big problem, right? That's a big problem for me. And it doesn't have to be with the sexualization of the character. It's the simple fact of the game was designed to be one way, and once it reached the shores that weren't from its origin country, all of a sudden it changed. That's not the initial image. That's not the initial content that was made by the creators. That's a form of censorship, whether you want to admit it or not. It just is. Now, you can say this company Nintendo wanted to get a better rating in the West, and that's fine. I understand that conversation, but that doesn't deny the fact that the game is still being censored. So when people say, hey, we're celebrating Stellar Blade announcing that it's uncensored worldwide, that is a massive win, and we need to see more games willing to take the fall of a higher rating or a worse rating to keep the artistic vision alive. So anyway, guys, thank you so much for watching this video. I hope you did enjoy it. If you did, consider leaving me a subscribe. I would greatly appreciate it. Don't forget to like the video, comment, let me know what you thought, and I'll see you guys on the next one. Hypnotic out.
Who hurt you?